Hello again, friends. Welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips joined by Wes Mitchell. Will Muschamp held his midweek presser today as South Carolina gets ready for the home opener against East Carolina coming up on Saturday, 4 o'clock kickoff at Williams-Brice. And Wes, Muschamp was mum on the quarterback situation. He did not name a starter today, and that was the one bit of information that I think a lot of folks were looking to gain from today's press conference.
Yeah, well, I think that it's one of those situations where, again, if you're South Carolina, you're probably going to go for any conceivable advantage you can find. And I think, generally with a quarterback, when you have a quarterback battle, unless a guy is just head and shoulders above and you want to sort of give him that confidence boost by saying you're the guy, it makes sense to sort of continue to hold off on naming a starter each week until somebody just grabs the reins of that position. Now, I think last week heading into Mississippi State, it made, all the sense in the world for Perry Orth to be the starter for that game. I think you look at the Mississippi State game and how it played out with McIlwain playing the entire second half. You're back at home now, a little bit, obviously better environment for South Carolina. I think it would make a lot of sense for Brandon McIlwain to get the start. So, even though Muschamp's not announcing it, not leaning that way, at least publicly, I would sort of estimate my personal opinion would be that McIlwain's probably going to be your guy.
Okay, Wes, the Gamecocks turned it over twice in the first half with Orth at quarterback in the loss to Mississippi State this past Saturday night. But then, as you said, freshman Brandon McIlwain came in, did not turn the football over, and the Gamecocks scored 2 touchdowns in that second half, actually outscored Mississippi State 14-3 in the second half with McIlwain running the offense. So, again, your impression would be that McIlwain will start. Do you think, they'll run multiple quarterbacks this week, or do you think McIlwain goes the whole way?
I think it's still going to be fluid. I think you could see the other quarterbacks play, but, I would probably a little bit less certain that multiple quarterbacks will play this week than I was the first 2 games. I think you look at what McIlwain did. He did provide a spark, sort of added a different element to the offense. But he also, I think, I thought it was kind of like you get with any freshman. You get the ups and you get the downs. There were some other plays to be made. He missed some balls, missed some passes that where plays were there to be made and they were not able to make them. So, I thought it was up and down. It was kind of a high risk, high reward. You had some big plays though too. And, I think also important to remember, the second half of a game like that, you can say factually, statistically, South Carolina outscored Mississippi State 14-3, but when you have a 24-0 lead on a team, you're sort of, your play calling defensively is going to be a little bit different. You're probably going to play just a little bit more zone. You're probably going to sit back and say we're going to keep everything in front of us a little bit more.
Right.
And, the defensive line for Mississippi State, I don't think their pass rush was as ferocious in the second half as it was, especially as the second half wore on, as it was in the first half. Those guys, to me, in the first half looked like a bunch that had something to prove. They were absolutely harassing or all first half. That continued a bit in the second half, but as the game sort of wore on and as South Carolina's offense sort of was finally able to chip away and get in the end zone a couple of times, I thought Mississippi State sort of maybe wore down a little bit, but also sort of, I thought, took their foot off the gas a little bit. So I think it's always important to sort of put everything in perspective. McIlwain gave the offense a spark, but, I also think, man, you look at the offensive line play and you say you almost have to have a guy that is going to be a little bit of a run threat too if you're going to play behind this offensive line unless they improve a great deal. Because I think, how many times, Emerson, this offseason we talk about the sort of keys for this team, and one of them was, I probably said this 1,000 times this offseason, the offensive line was going to have to carry the offense. The offense was only going to go as far as the offensive line. The offensive line has veterans. The offensive line is going to have to do their job for everybody else to settle in. We talked about that time and time again, and obviously that has not taken place.
Right, Wes, let's stay with the offensive line briefly here. The injury to Donnell Stanley forced a little bit of shuffling of the lineup up front for the Gamecock offense. Where do we stand there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of shuffling. I personally, was surprised after things went so well against in the second half against Vanderbilt that they sort of shuffled again, this past week moving into Mississippi State. Then, of course, you lose Blake Camper, who I think, frankly, for a sophomore guy who's really playing extensive snaps for the first time. I thought Blake Camper played pretty darn well. He looks, like a tackle who can handle the speed rush on the outside. Now they lose him. That was sort of announced, confirmed again in the press conference today. They will be without Blake Camper until, they're without Donnell Stanley until after the bye week. So it's one of those things where their depth is sort of gone now. It's good that you had that depth because they still have guys that they feel comfortable with, but the depth has sort of been whittled away. I think you're going to see a front five of Zandy, Bailey, Helms, Knott, and DJ Park in some form or fashion, in some order. So they've sort of gotten whittled away there.
Yeah.
Muschamp talked about Malik Young possibly getting some snaps at some point along the way, but I think those five are probably going to be your guys. I do think you maybe look at switching Helms and Knott back with possibly running Helms out there at center and Knott out there at guard, but it's just going to sort of depend on practice this week and what Sean Elliott thinks his best combination is.
All right. Depth on the offensive line appeared to be a strength for the Gamecocks coming into the season, but here we are just 2 games in, and the Gamecocks already down 2 offensive linemen at least for the next few weeks. Gamecock Central Radio here with Emerson Phillips and Wes Mitchell. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. We're on the App Store and on Google Play. It's a free phone app. To subscribe to this podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Wes, Muschamp was critical of the defense, particularly the secondary after the loss to Mississippi State on Saturday night, and he said that effort was a problem. That effort in the secondary was an issue, and he promised changes there. This was Saturday night immediately after the game, but today during his press conference, he kind of backed off of those comments a little bit and said that the effort wasn't a problem so much as the results. So Muschamp, critical initially Saturday night in the immediate aftermath of the loss, but he did kind of back away from those comments a little bit today.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of, you watch a game and you see the results and you sort of think why you think it's going that way in real time, and then you go back and, the film doesn't lie. The film can show you so many different things because you can go over it multiple times. And, there's 11 guys defensively and 11 guys on the offense that you're trying to watch in any given play. So, I think it's kind of hard sometimes to know what's going on with every guy, or almost impossible to know in live action. So, obviously they went back and reviewed the film, but I think, that's kind of an example of what we've been saying, kind of an example of just it is what it is, to sort of still a classic Spurrierism. I mean, it's kind of a situation where obviously these guys are going to have to play better, but some of it is just the lack of depth, the lack of talent at certain positions. So, they'll go back to fundamentals this week. They'll work on tackling in practice, but they work on tackling every day, so it's not like that's something they have not been doing. So they're just going to have to hope these guys sort of gel as the season goes on, get better as the season goes on, and sort of go from there. I did think it was interesting, Muschamp sort of explaining the difference in playing a spread team with athletes and playing a team like Vanderbilt, who's more of a traditional pro-style offense. If you miss a tackle in the box, like against Vanderbilt, you got your teammates probably right there behind you, and a guy gets an extra 2, 3, 4 yards. If you miss a tackle against Mississippi State, they're really good at getting guys out on the edge, getting guys to the perimeter, getting their quarterback in a one-on-one situation. And, when you miss a tackle out there, that's the difference between, a stop and a third down and a punt and, a 15 or a 50-yard run. So, Mississippi State, they've always had a good scheme of things, and I think they showed why that scheme's so popular is because if you miss tackles out there, it hurts you, especially if you got good enough athletes. And I think Mississippi State clearly does. And this is something people aren't really talking about a whole lot. The Fitzgerald kid, didn't really – he got benched basically the first game for Mississippi State, but he looked like a different player on this past Saturday. He looked calm, comfortable, collected, and I think South Carolina's defensive guys sort of I won't say took him for granted, but they misjudged, I think, his athleticism because there were several times when this kid breaks into the open field, and you can clearly see the Carolina defenders take a bad angle just because they underestimated his speed.
Yeah, Fitzgerald ran good for a big man, no question about that, and he hurt the Gamecocks in Mississippi State's win over South Carolina this past Saturday night. So the Gamecocks are 1-1. And Wes, we can turn our attention now to the home opener coming up on Saturday. The first home game for Will Muschamp as the Gamecocks head coach. First home game of the 2016 season, and East Carolina will be the opponent. Wes, they are 2-0. And they scored an upset over NC State this past weekend. They've scored 85 points in 2 games. They're a true spread offense team, although they will run some big packages. They like to run multiple tight ends. They do a lot of different things. They're up-tempo offensively. Muschamp in today's presser said that East Carolina has done a tremendous job of recruiting skill players in recent years, and they've got some weapons on offense. So talk about what kind of problems East Carolina might present. 4 o'clock kick Saturday at Williams-Brice.
Yeah, that game was not a fluke. I was watching some other games too, but I watched the majority of that game. And, I would say ECU matched up player for player with NC State. They've been very, very good against Power 5 schools here recently. It's almost not an upset anymore, even if it is by, the lines or whatever. But it's almost come to be expected that ECU is going to give some teams fits and is going to beat some teams that most people don't expect them to. So, I was very, very impressed with their new head coach. I was very, very impressed with that team overall. Like I said, they matched up with NC State, and I think there's actually a lot of carryover for South Carolina as far as the ECU offensive scheme and the Mississippi State offensive scheme. There's obviously going to be differences there, but there's a lot of similarities too, and philosophically especially, the idea is to get you in space to where those missed tackles hurt you. So, I think that again, South Carolina, a lot of the same keys to beating Mississippi State this past week remain in place this week against ECU, and I'm sure it worries the coaches that they were not able to do a lot of those things that will be very, very important in this game, because it goes back again. Tackling in space, that's the biggest thing, and they'll have to do it this week.
Right. East Carolina is going to spread the football around. Their quarterback threw for 297 yards in the win over NC State, and Philip Nelson, the QB for East Carolina, has got 6 touchdown passes through 2 games. ECU beat Western Carolina 52-7 to open the season, and East Carolina tailback James Summers is averaging 8.5 yards a carry. So East Carolina is going to spread it out, and tackling will be at a premium again this Saturday at Williams-Brice.
Yeah, and the starting quarterback can make all the throws. They actually have a sort of a change of pace quarterback as well that runs the football and is really, really good too. Sort of not even necessarily a wildcat. I think they let him throw it too, but that's something to watch as well. This is an ECU team that has weapons and knows how to put their weapons in space. So I'm gonna warn people. This is probably going to be another close football game. It's a game South Carolina should win at home, but once again, just go ahead and prepare yourself. If you're a South Carolina fan, don't go into this game thinking that South Carolina is just going to rout them at home. You're going to be disappointed if that's the case. It's going to be a close game, and I think if you're a fan, you hope South Carolina can sort of pull away as the game wears on. And you know what, Emerson, I think in the grand scheme of things, I made a post on our board, maybe Sunday night. I'm a little bit not surprised, but a portion of the fan base got so upset about the loss to Mississippi State. And believe me, I know the fans are very, very passionate, and I love it, because that's why I can have a job, is because these fans are so into football, and that's why they pack the stadium, with 80,000 people. But at the same time, I think we've all got to keep some perspective about this team. This is, to me, this is year 0. There's going to be some times where this team plays decently and looks good, and we're all going to say they're making progress, such as the Vanderbilt game. They weren't as good as they looked in the second half of the Vanderbilt game. Then there's going to be some times where it's very, very ugly. Mississippi State game, most of that game, they're not as bad as they looked against Mississippi State. The truth is somewhere in the middle of that. Long term, South Carolina has got to recruit their way out of this hole. There's really no other way around it. Short term, it's about getting to as many wins as possible, trying to find a way to get to 6, which I think in the preseason we said They needed to at least split the first 4. They still have a good shot of doing that. They actually have a decent shot at 3-1 because Kentucky's not very good.
Yeah.
So, as far as short term this season, just fans got to just accept it and realize it. South Carolina's going to take some lumps. There's going to be some positive moments too. They've got to find a way to get to 6 and develop the young guys while they're at it. So people got to just sit back and sort of enjoy the ride, because anybody expecting 7, 8, 9 wins, I think, is going to be sorely disappointed.
Right. The Gamecocks dealt a bit of a tough hand with the schedule to open the season this year. It's the first time in 15 years that any SEC team has had to play 3 consecutive conference games on the road. And obviously East Carolina coming up Saturday will be the 3rd game of the season, and it's the first home game of the year. So, Wes, continuing with this perspective theme, talk about the importance of home field advantage for South Carolina on Saturday. Not only will it be Will Muschamp's first game as the head coach, he'll be on the Gamecock sideline for the first time at Williams-Brice as the head man, but a lot of young players will be playing their first home games at Williams-Brice in front of the home crowd. And I would think home field advantage, home crowd noise could really help the Gamecocks this week. It's not going to help you block and tackle, but certainly fan participation, spirited crowd at Williams-Brice could help motivate this team and give them some inspiration. So playing at home will be big on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is that you would think it could help them get a quicker start. You sort of hope they can feed off the momentum of the crowd, feed off their fans, and sort of get off to a better start. Because I think, to me, it looked like, they were trying to produce a big play to start the game the other night against Mississippi State with a deep ball to start the game. And, Deebo Samuel pulls up a little bit lame with the hamstring bothering him. So I think they know that they need to start fast. They're trying to do everything they can to start fast. They need a spark. And this is something where the home field crowd could give South Carolina a little bit of a boost. Because, again, it's going to be a tightly contested game, I think. So in those games, you always want to have the home crowd on your side.
Yeah, weather should be good this week. The 4 o'clock kick is ideal. Give everybody plenty of opportunity to get into the stadium, and you'll still get home at a reasonable hour on Saturday night. So we're really expecting a fun day Saturday for South Carolina and East Carolina, the first home game for the Gamecocks here in 2016. Wes Mitchell joining us for a report today. He attended the Will Muschamp press conference today. And, Wes, it was a quick presser. 15 minutes is about all it was. A lot of questions, but some brief answers from Coach Muschamp. He's got his eyes on Saturday's game.
Yeah, he's got his eye on it. So do we. Obviously, we hope everybody will check us out on GamecockCentral.com, Emerson.
All right. Thanks a lot, Wes. We'll talk to you again real soon.
All right. Sounds good, man.
He's Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for being with us.